It's back. We've known about it, but now we finally see it. Today we got a brand new look at Season 3 and the Warzone side of things for Black Ops 6 upcoming. Season 3 kicks off on April 3rd, so we're getting down to the wire here. But with this starts a week of likely what will be major reveals ahead for the Season 3 launch. While I'm expecting multiplayer details and a roadmap, along with a full reveal sometime soon, a zombies trailer, and hopefully an anti-cheat blog of some sorts, things are kicking off today with the Warzone focus on the return of Verdansk. This first look is an intel drop detailing the work that Vindication put into recreating this from the ground up on the current engine and how some critical updates were made. Not necessarily to the gameplay or anything like that, but to things like the lighting situation and a few other smaller, more minor details. But today we're taking a look at what was revealed and what you should know about. So drop your thoughts, drop a like, and make sure to subscribe for more FPS coverage, including the Black Ops 6 Season 3 update with all that's to come, and also over on the second channel for guides, reviews, and walkthroughs of basically any other game that piques my interest. Looking forward to getting more and more into the swing of that here, so I'd love to have you in either of those communities. But for now, let's take a look at Verdansk's return. So out of this intel drop, let's talk about some details that you may have missed. Well, firstly, graphically, I think it looks beautiful. Obviously, I think Modern Warfare 2019's engine was great for Verdansk, but graphically speaking, there's definitely a bit more here to this than when you take a look at things on a more micro level, not like those top-down panoramic views of the entire map of Verdansk. When you can see the more intricate design details, definitely looks great, I think, for what they've done with this. One of the big things they talked about with this was, though, adjustments to the visuals and the lighting. So much of the interior versus exterior play that was in Warzone 1 was a huge problem with how that was handled from that transition to light to dark and vice versa. Going outside, you'd have that momentary flashbang style situation, and then going into the dark, it took a bit of a second for the lighting visuals to adjust so that you could actually see clearly. So being able to mitigate that a bit, that's something that was attempted in Warzone 1 quite a few times, but seeing now another larger adjustment here with Verdansk coming back, I like the sound of that. This is one of those things that just made pushing a team or something like that hard in some instances, so I welcome this change. It also seemed like a lot of the questions we've recently discussed have been answered. Whenever we saw that TAC map that was released a couple of days ago, there were things like, well, it looked like there was water in the rivers that you'd see cutting through the map. It looked like dam was somewhat thawed out in the lower portions, but neither of those things are actually going to be happening. The water in the river is the same as what we had within Verdansk, where it's just basically puddles or like ankle or shin deep, so it's not something you have to worry about any swimming mechanics or anything in that regard, or as in Warzone 1, insta-killing you, which, speaking of, water does appear to be near the southern portions of the map, but in that sort of out-of-bounds area. Not going to insta-kill you this time around, but I'd be curious if it extends out at all, or if it is something that, like, as soon as you jump into the water, that's when the countdown timer for the 5 to 10 seconds to, hey, get back into the map, if that kicks into it, or if there's going to be, again, like some distance you can go out that you can swim for a little bit if you want to AFK or whatever the case may be before you have to get kicked back into the map and that out of bounds timer kicks in. The interior of Stadium was something that seems to be still up for debate. There was a flash of the exterior where the metal entryways, those sort of sheet metal fencing that comes over the entryways, those appear to be closed. So I am curious to see if that means that the stadium is entirely closed off and maybe it opens up as the seasons progress, or if it's just something that the main sort of entryways that you see on the polar opposite sides of the stadium are open that you can get in through one of two different ways. We'll have to wait and see, but that is something that was an interesting detail for that rumor that's currently there. We also learned of some additional cover being added into certain locations around the map, where, strangely, in an altered version of the intel drop, there was a whole additional section discussing the way they handled cover in some areas around the map. Of course, there are a lot of areas within Verdansk where it's just wide open, absolutely zero cover at all. And it doesn't seem to be anything too crazy, but it seems like Binox added a little bit more cover in areas that were otherwise entirely wide open. Things like the aqueducts leading into downtown and other areas now have a bit more cover. Not much, but a bit that can help you out on certain rotation. For me, this is something that I understand where it's like the purest form of we want Verdansk exactly how it was, but I also don't think that these change too much of the gameplay experience, that it's any problem or anything like that, but that might just be me. We also learned from this intel drop some additional gameplay details. Ziplines are seen explicitly in locations like the SKN Comms skyscraper, that large skyscraper in downtown, the Capitol building rooftop, which I don't actually remember if those were there in the original Capitol building for Verdansk. I want to lean towards no, but I could be wrong on that. We saw them on the quarry cliff sides, train station to the rooftop, rooftop and 1 or 2 other locations as well throughout this intel drop, that ziplines are going to be returning here on day 1, so not quite one-to-one with the March 10th, 2020 build of Verdansk that we saw when Warzone initially launched, but fast forwarding a little bit ahead to where you had some quality of life adjustments added in. Now that said, if that is something that is a little bit borderline for you, it's definitely nice to know that we do not have redeploy drones seen in any of the footage here of Verdansk. So while it is something that ziplines will give alternative flank routes so that you don't have one single choke point for a skyscraper or something like that, it is something that at least you're not having another way to traverse the map or to end up getting that third aerial attack as well. So that's something that I think is a decent compromise, I'd say, but may entirely just be my opinion. Beyond this intel drop, though, the last 2 days over the weekend here, we did learn about a couple of more things that have already been provided by the official Call of Duty socials. Floating loot is going to be returning, so what we had since Modern Warfare 2 and Warzone 2's launch, where everything was just on the ground and sometimes was a huge pain to pick up, that is now going to be reverting back to the Warzone 1 loot, or should be in theory. Whether or not, again, you have something that presents any issues like we've seen in the past, it's possible, but floating loot does look to return. And also, the vertical buy station UI is returning as well, which is one that I absolutely can get behind. Since Warzone 2 dropped, I honestly thought the UI was absolutely horrible, and one of those changes that, like, you didn't need to change at all, personally speaking. But one thing that I did also like about this is that you're not just reverting back to what it was in Verdansk. We do have an additional quality of life change in the redeploy all option when buying teammates back, instead of just having to do it individually. So that can save you a button click or two, which definitely in a pinch situation could be the matter of life and death. So I do like that change as well. Now, talking about these 2 things in particular, I don't want it to seem like we're praising going backwards, like we're going from things that we should have had. Why are we giving props whenever we should never have lost these things? I think it was JGod who mentioned it. I saw briefly in passing when logging onto Twitter for the first time in a little while. He had put it into words that I couldn't quite articulate, but is a perfect representation of what I think, talking about and being happy for these kind of changes, what it really means here. It's not so much something that we're praising them for bring it back, like, yay, we're so happy this is coming back, woohoo, but more so like it's validation of voicing prior opinions for so long finally being considered the right move. Like, it's vindication that we weren't just screaming into the void and we weren't total idiots, and that this and other items that have since been reverted, whatever it may be, we weren't crazy, and after putting months of playtime into the game, maybe we actually know a thing or two about what we're talking about. Like, I'll be the first to tell you, I'm just an idiot with a microphone on the internet, but sometimes, that said, I feel like immersing yourself in something for months of the year in playtime, maybe there's some insight the casual player wouldn't have, and that is beneficial and insightful, or something a dev may have missed here or there, or a logical explanation why something could work better than another intended design decision. I'm not happy per se that we're getting these things back that we should have already had, but happier instead that it was validating previous positions that I've had in the sake of arguing and pushing back on some of these design decisions that I didn't agree with. I don't know if that's just me, but I thought that was a very solid way to put it, and kind of was like the light bulb moment of like, wow, how did I never think to articulate it that way? But anyways, beyond that, that's what we know of so far out of these reveals. Things that I'd like to see return here, I'd like to see that armor plating and audio adjustments to match the sound effects of Warzone 1. I don't know if we'll see that happen at all. It's definitely possible because we've had those sort of sound packs in the past, so why not just, throw it in as a default thing? That'd be pretty sick. Vehicle adjustments, I think, are also very much so something that is needed in terms of, like, the overall vehicle play within Warzone 1. The Warzone 2 mechanics are way more slowed down, and again, with things like no redeploy drones, I think that the way that you speed up the game or make it more fluid is by having those options of traversal in vehicles being good again. Making those pacings, the turning radius of the truck, or other things like that, those are, of course, big improvements that could be made to the overall gameplay experience. Mechanics returning, I think, at least to some degree, would be very cool. Obviously, they're not going to get rid of Omni movement, but I do think it'd be nice to see them bridge that gap a bit between Modern Warfare 2019 mechanics for this and the current systems in place. So all that kind of stuff, we're going to have to wait until the patch notes for Season 3, if any of that does happen. It'd be sick, but we don't quite know. So the final thing that I just want to kind of reiterate here is, well, a lot of people are definitely jumping on the hype bandwagon here for this, and that's awesome. Like, if you are very excited for Warzone and the return of Verdansk, hell yeah, more power to you. I love that for you. But to me, I still have the same position, and I want to be very clear on that. I don't think this is going to save Warzone unless there are other changes made besides just them going, all right, here's Verdansk, have fun. Because at that point, it's kind of like a band-aid on a severed limb. Pending no changes to gameplay adjustments, which leakers seem to be thinking will happen, pending no anti-cheat updates, which we have no idea what that will be like. Admittedly, we did see a handful of cheat providers recently shut down, but also, on the flip side of that coin, they just pop back up under additional international domains. So the fight to attack the source is still ongoing, but the anti-cheat and stopping players in the act when they are cheating, we still don't know if there's any update with that. So with things like that still up in the air, the original feel of Verdansk and the security to play without cheaters won't be there, which might just make this a novelty launch of some sorts. So I'm personally excited to play Verdansk again, but I don't know that unless those changes are made, if it's going to be something that a month to 2 months down the line, people will still be super happy about it. I don't know. I mean, I guess time will be the only determining factor and the only thing that we can use to accurately measure that, but for now, that's where we're at. So that was our first look at Season 3 in Black Ops 6 and the Verdansk return in a much more enlightening capacity. So let me know your thoughts down below. Like what you saw here out of this intel drop, dislike it, whatever the case, drop your thoughts. But if you enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor, drop a like on it, and make sure to subscribe for more Black Ops 6 and other FPS coverage, both here on the main channel and any other game really on the second channel. So I'd love to have you guys out there, but for now, thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care, and peace.